Now we will move to Dr. Nawar Golley. Nawar Golley has been teaching in different universities for more than 25 years at institutions such as School of Oriental and African Studies and IUS. And now she will present her paper about my travels around the world, a narrative of freedom, mobility, and connection. Dr. Nawar, the floor is for you.
Thank you, Dr. Ara. Thank you, everybody. But I have to say it's really getting late for me. Usually I'm in bed at this time. So if I fall asleep on you, don't be surprised.
Okay.
I'll try not to. Okay, I'll share my screen. First, I'll have to open it, I guess. Yes?
Yes, we can see it, or okay. I can see it at least.
Yeah, I have to say that with such a large group of Al-Saadawi lovers, we are actually repeating quite a bit because we all share our enthusiasm and love and understanding of her. So I also, yet again, you will see that I'm going to be repeating some of what you heard. However, what is new in what I am going to say is probably the actual text that I am going to talk about, which no one, thankfully, has mentioned today at least. But I'm sure many of you have come across or have read. And if you haven't, I actually make a strong recommendation to actually read. My interest in that particular book, as in the title of my presentation today, comes from my interest in anything to do with self-expression. And even though this, you will discover that from the title of this book, that this is not necessarily a traditional autobiography, but it is indeed, it has the autobiographical in it, big time. So let's go, and I put this picture because this is one of my favorite photos of our beloved Nawar Saadawi. I just love to see it all the time. I'm hoping to cover these points, but if I can't, then I apologize. But the idea is that I'm gonna just talk about why Nawar Saadawi, why travel writing, what the importance of travel writing is. I'll talk a little bit about the structure of the book, not much. I'll talk about two important things, motifs, themes, if you like. And then I will end, and then I will share a very creative poem, not by me though. So it's a surprise. So let's go. To me and to many of you, as I am sure, Nawar Saadawi is a relentless feminist role model for many Arab women and non-Arab women and men. She's one of the most important feminist activists, in my opinion, and scholars in the Arab region who has received international acclaim. She's one of the first Arab women to raise the issue of sexual oppression publicly in a daring manner. Before her, Arab feminists discussed forms of social, economic, religious, and political oppressions, of course. But what she brought forth is like the brave and courageous way of speaking about sexual oppression, in addition to other forms of oppression. And the power of her work, in my opinion, her work and her writings, comes from the fact that she personally experienced all the systems of oppression, the sexual, the economic, the political, against which she herself fought. So probably that's the secret of her strength and of her impact, is that everything came as a result of true and real experiences, as we heard from many speakers before me. I don't know why this is not moving. Okay. Now, she fought against what I call the evil triangle. She fought against the sexual, the economic, and the political forms of oppression. So maybe this is, or maybe for sure, not maybe, Saadawi became a very controversial writer, having been fiercely attacked by critics and her writings having been banned by some Arab regimes, as we also heard earlier. That makes the statement true that no other Arab woman has been praised so much by many and attacked so much by many others. Both the praise and the attack came from within, but also from outside the region. Well, no wonder for this, because, as I said, she actually fought against this evil triangle: gender, class, and political oppressions. So from within the region, she was attacked because she criticized those who are responsible for the women's status and for class oppressions from within. And those who also criticized her from outside did so because she was and has been very critical of the colonial and imperial powers that have maintained the control of the women and poor countries, because she did write a lot about the rich and poor divide in our world. So probably for all of this, we at this conference have all reason to celebrate Nawar Saadawi, not only today, but every day. So thank you for organizing this conference. And this is why I actually joined this conference, because to me, Nawar Saadawi is, I consider her to be the reason I am here. She's behind my feminist consciousness. She's behind my activism. She's behind my academic and scholarly work. Without her, okay. So as I said, the book that in the light of which I am speaking is my travels around the world, which is originally, of course, in Arabic as رحلاتي حول العالم, which she wrote in 1984 after she got out of prison. It got published in 2 volumes and like paperback volumes in Cairo, which was really very few of her writings came out of Cairo, as you know, because most of her works were rejected within Egypt. So she had to go either mainly to Beirut or even outside to have her works published. But this one got published inside Egypt. The book covers her travels over the 1960s and the 1970s, like from the first trip she made outside Egypt for 20 years, and then she stopped there, promising that her travels beyond the 70s will come out. They haven't come out yet. The English translation came out in 91, translated by Shirley Eber, published by Methuen in London. Now, I like you to read this dedication because the dedication speaks volumes, actually, and speaks for what Nawar Saadawi stands for, or about some of the things she stands for, because to me, she stands for a lot more. She wrote, "To all who travel and who know exile, far from the homeland, and to all who know exile in the homeland." So you could see, you can see from this dedication the extent and the scope of her work and of her interest in all people. You can see there is no mentioning of women here. So in all people who experience some sort of oppression, whether where they live in their own countries or outside. And Nawar Saadawi got the lion's share of suffering, both in her own country, in her own region, and also, as we've heard, she got also quite a bit of attack. globally. So a little bit about why I'm talking about her travel work, even though many people, in fact, I have not heard anybody talk about her, this kind of writing by Nawar Saadawi. I myself, as I mentioned earlier at the beginning of this presentation, when I read her travel account, I read it as an autobiographic account, and that's how I got interested in it. And it was actually during that time that I got the pleasure and the honor of meeting Saadawi personally, having just corresponded with her, and then having heard that she was in London at the time when I was a graduate student at the University of Nottingham. And I made a great effort to actually go to London. I was a very poor student, poor graduate student, but I put all my saving and went to London, and I brought her up to Nottingham, and she gave a talk at the University of Nottingham, and I couldn't have been prouder. You know, those 3 days that I spent with her, to me, were the most precious days of my life. So I told her I was working on her for my PhD, mainly on her work. I worked on her memoir from the women's prison, and on her memoirs of a woman doctor, in addition to the travel work. So I asked her in a letter why she wrote her travels. And basically, she reiterated what she had written for the English translation about why she wrote that. And she said in her letter, to express my views about what I see in other countries and how in this light I see the self also. It is a travel book in a different way, both travel to the other and travel to the self. You can see both in a different light. And as I mentioned in my comment to Dr. Miriam Cook's presentation, to me, that's again an added attribute and an added testimony to her genius. That even in writing about her travel, she doesn't just write about travel in a traditional, conventional way. Even there, she is really showing great connections and making great points that she had expressed in a lot of her other work, whether her scientific field work or in her fiction. Now, keep this answer in mind about her, saying that travel is important, because she sees in travel that travel to places, travel to others, but also travel back to the self. Because in 2013, which is not so an old scholarly work on travel writing. In fact, it's called the Cambridge Introduction to Travel Writing by an important scholar, Tim Youngs. I can see a reiteration of what Saadawi mentioned in the 90s about travel writing. Tim Youngs wrote in the introduction to his book, travel writing is the most socially important of all literary genres. It records our temporal and spatial progress. It throws light on how we define ourselves and how we identify others. Its construction of our sense of me and you, us and them, operates on individual and national levels and in the realms of psychology, society, and economics. Probably some of you who know a little bit about travel writing, it actually did not receive scholarly attention till the 70s, the 1970s. So when she was writing about her travels, not much scholarly critiques have been published anyways. So you can see in Tim Young's statement about travel writing and what it does, the similarity with Nawar Saadawi's very innocent statement that she made about why we travel. Again, another, I like to share this two statements about the importance of travel as in her book. She wrote, I began to realize that traveling outside the homeland is necessary, not only to know other countries and other peoples, but to know who I am and who we are. For knowing the self can only be achieved in the light of knowing the others. And also another statement, in addition to knowing the self as a purpose for her travels and writing about her travels, she wrote, we see our homeland more clearly when we are away from it than when we are in it. And this reminds us of what Miriam said in her presentation, what Nawal Saadawi told her, that it's only when I'm outside Egypt that I can write about myself and I can write about Egypt. She continues to say, I have seen many positives and negatives in the East and the West, which have revealed some of the positives and negatives within my own homeland. And again, from Tom Young's scholarly book on travel writing, the processes of affiliation and differentiation at play within it, meaning within travel writing, can work to forge alliances, precipitate crises, and provoke wars. Traveling is something we all do on different scales, in one form or another. We all have stories of travel, and they are of more than personal consequences. So I see great connection between this scholarly work and Nawal Saadawi was like very innocent and kind of natural way of expressing herself. A little bit about the structure of the book, which covers, as I said, her travels over the 60s and 70s. The book records her impressions of and experiences in the various countries she traveled in. She first departs from her homeland to attend a medical conference in Algeria. Then it is on to Europe and the United States. North America is followed by Jordan, and then a stop in Helsinki and a visit to the Soviet Union at the time, and Central Asia come next, and then Iran. A long visit to India, and then travels in East and West Africa, ending her travel account with a conversation on politics and colonialism with the Senegalese writer and filmmaker Ousmane Sembène at Dakar Airport. The structure within each separate part, because the book is separated in parts, however, is not as simple as the structure of the book. So the book goes chronological, however, each part is a lot more complex than that. So each part is multidimensional in nature and is anything but chronological. Travel usually refers to movement in space. In Saadawi's travels, there is also a non-linear movement in time. So I see her genius and her creativity in this work in the same way that you see it in all other in other work. So a little bit about the kind of two important motifs that I talked about. One is the mirror or the looking glass, and one is border crossing. I don't know how much time I still have, so I am just completing as if I have all the time in the world. In reading travels as a journey to the self and to the wider human world, two motifs recur throughout the book, the mirror and the border crossing.
Excuse me, Doctor, you have 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
So you have time, yes.
Okay. The two motifs are connected. For Saadawi travels out of a double desire to rediscover the self through understanding the other and to cross the borders of her own country, which she calls prison, only in order to know it better. So you can see the love-hate relationship, if you like, that we all sometimes have towards our countries, especially when our countries politically oppress us. But the homeland is a homeland that we love. But the politics of our countries make us have this complex relationship with this homeland. So from one chapter to another, one country to another, Saadawi is looking at her childhood, adolescence, and adulthood, hence developing a new understanding of herself and of her life throughout. Travel for Saadawi, and I quote from her book, is not flying in planes, visiting museums, sleeping and eating in luxury hotels. It is rather walking around the streets and dusty quarters, discovering people everywhere, especially in those places from which tourists run or where they put their handkerchiefs to their noses should they happen to pass by. So again, from this, you can understand her attitude about travel and why she travels. A story she talks about, say, from Helsinki in Finland, Saadawi feels unity with the women she meets for the women's conference. On a train to Leningrad from Helsinki, they all sing together, and feelings of oneness bring them nearer to each other. Voices and songs in different languages and accents ran through the air. Arab tunes mixed with Russian, Afghani, with American, with Spanish, with English, with French, with Vietnamese. I found myself singing a song, the words and language of which I did not know. We became one group and one country, and the artificial differences that separate people from each other disappeared. So you could see how Saadawi's travel helped her develop sense of solidarity at a very, very global scale. And this is seen in her work outside this book. With the men and women writers in Kazakhstan, Saadawi drank to friendship between the people of Asia and Africa. The laughter and chatter grew louder as the formality between Indian, Egyptian, Algerian, Sudanese, Russian, and African writers disappeared. And we all became people of the same country, the country of art and literature. So in that united atmosphere, she hid her surprise. Hands holding glasses of mare's milk were raised in toast to art and friendship. So she raised hers too and drank. So these are some of the examples that you see how Saadawi developed her understanding of her place in the world. Saadawi grew to build an identity through transgressing many prescribed roles and rules of what a woman should be and could do. So her border crossing was not simply geographic crossing. She was crossing so many other borders too. Travel helped Saadawi cross many socially established borders. Discarding her makeup box given to her by her maternal aunt to cover her dark skin, and straightening the stoop that her paternal aunt advised her to walk with to hide her height. This is a part that I'm particularly proud of because it was a travel that made Nawar Saadawi get over this complex that many of us probably understand and relate to. And many of us probably grew up to be told that you have to prescribe to certain model of beauty, certain standards of beauty. So she was so honest in this book, and she about the fact that as a child she struggled with the color of her complexion, as she was constantly being teased about her dark complexion by her maternal grandmother, who was fair-skinned, calling her slave girl war. Travel helped Nawar Saadawi to see herself beautiful. In fact, when she was in Paris, she talks about an incident where she was standing next to a Parisian woman who looked at her and told her, "Madame, you are so beautiful." And Saadawi kind of stopped and looked at herself. "Me? Beautiful?" And that made her kind of go back to what her grandmother used to tell her, that she was actually too dark to be beautiful, and she should beautify herself, she should put makeup, etc. And these kind of experiences that she had made her kind of take a decision that never ever put makeup again, that she's gonna, and I'm gonna read this quote: "The one true love of my life is the love of my real self. In spite of that, I only gave up makeup completely after I understood the worth of my mind, and then had the courage to face the world with a clean and washed face. No makeup." I say this because many people know Nawal Saadawi to be this like a clean face, no makeup face. And in this book, you could see she talks about this, that it took her a long time to have that courage to actually get rid of that. She also critiqued establishments. For a few years of her career as a married woman with children, Saadawi worked for the United Nations. So when she worked with the United Nations, she also traveled to many countries, and she talks about about her travels when she was working with the UN. She criticized the establishment of the United Nations and left a past that many people would want to keep for its financial value. So because she's when she worked for them, she never forgot that she herself, and that she is an honest person, and she would not just kiss ass, as it were. So she criticized the very establishment that she worked for, and as a result, she left, and she had no regret leaving. Many other people would have probably kept quiet and kept a job that made them a lot of money, but not Nawal. Identifying with the oppressed. We have been talking, all of us, throughout this today's conference, that Nawal Saadawi does not identify with women only, but she identifies with any person oppressed on any level. So as a medical doctor, she chose to specialize in psychiatry, a field that many Egyptian doctors, including men, would not choose. Would not choose. Meaning she took the hard way. Instead of, regularly specializing in something that most people would know, she took the hard way. And as a writer, her main concern was the social, political, and economic conditions of the oppressed, both men and women. Her outspokenness led her to prison for a few months, as also we heard. But she would not end her mission of fighting for her causes in a society and a world that are still behind as far as the rights of the oppressed are concerned. For that was what she learned from her extensive travel. The oppressed, albeit of different forms and shapes, were in every country she went to. I may have to skip some because I probably have 5 minutes, right? But probably I'm about to finish. Towards the end, we see a shift in her tone, a very important shift, and a move in tone from being personal, self-reflective, and analytical to becoming more political, self-assured, and descriptive. And this is very kind of understandable, because that's what her travel over, like the first part of her travel, she was very self-reflective until and she developed this sense of solidarity with the oppressed. And then her political consciousness became even deeper and wider. And even this can be seen in the tone of this travel book. That's the idea in this slide. So for the sake of time. So if the publisher actually says about the book, Methuen say, "My travels around the world is a unique and invaluable historical account, both politically and socially, of a changing world by one of its most courageous and honest writers," please believe them. They are not exaggerating at all.
Okay.
Now, this is the poem I'm going to end with. This is a poem that I found to be really interesting, written by an American poet called Angel Ellis. She wrote it in 2012, titled "For Nawal Saadawi." And the interesting thing about this poem is that Ellis kind of quotes Saadawi several times throughout this poem and then insert her own kind of responses. So I can let you see, this is the first part. She starts with Saadawi's early kind of excited statement about the revolution when it first started, when she joined them in Tahrir Square. This revolution is too late. But anyway, it came. So, Nawal Saadawi, it's your face transfixed in Cairo's Tahrir Square. And then another quote from Saadawi, I'm becoming more radical with age. We heard it today twice. I have noticed that writers, when they are old, become milder. But for me, it's the opposite. Your cotton hair in bunches like a girl's, your eyes glittering like Yeats' Chinese sages, carved in lapis lazuli with a hopeful long-legged bird, like sacred pieces of the black rock, held together with slashed lines of silver. Plastic surgery is a postmodern veil, but your face, like the gift of your name, is lifted to the weathers of experience. You shed 3 husbands and the caution of your children. You walk out of jails that shatter like discarded mirrors. They will never give it up by choice, even a husband in the house. No, power has to be taken with power. The last part, you wake and sleep in the square with this dream, day and night. Women and girls are beside boys in the streets. They are, and we are calling for justice, freedom, and equality. You recall the stolen flower of your womanhood. In Europe and America, women are circumcised mentally. A young man stands before you with his bride. He tells you, your books have made him a better man. Because of them, I wanted to marry not a slave, but a free woman. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nawar. Through your presentation, you open for us all the doors to experience the travel from the Saadawi point of view, more humanitarian visions to discuss, visions of crossing different borders, including the borders too. So many thanks for your presentation.
Well, she deserves the clap like the rest.
Yes, of course.